Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, Assistant Sports Editor for Multimedia at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, joined for the Wednesday edition of the North Shore Drive podcast by Christopher Carter, our Steelers insider, trying something new with me as the host and Chris getting a shot in the desk chair. You're usually used to him being the host of this show, but we're going to switch things up this season and give Chris a chance to kind of play expert a little bit and focus a little less on the hosting duties. So excited to have you along for that. We're going to talk about the mounting injuries at Steelers camp. I think Will Howard is the headliner with reports that he is going to miss up to 3 weeks or maybe more than that with a hand injury. But there have been a lot of bumps and bruises at Steelers training camp. So we're going to recap those and the level of concern you should have about them. Before we get to that, I want to thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's Edgar Snyder Associates. Law firms come and go, but what law firm has been here in Western PA fighting for injury victims for more than 40 years? It's Edgar Snyder Associates. What firm has a staff of over 130 people who live and work here? It's Edgar Snyder Associates. Law firms come and go, but Edgar Snyder is a name you can always trust. So remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. If you've been hurt in an accident, call them at 1-800-94-EDGAR or visit edgarsnyder.com. They're available 24/7. All right, Chris, let's get into it. The report from Ian Rappaport of NFL.com is that Will Howard will miss at least 3 weeks with a fractured hand. That's functionally all of the preseason in all likelihood.
Yeah.
Maybe he pops in on the back end, but he's going to miss a good chunk of that. We are not unfamiliar with rookies missing big chunks of training camp in the preseason. We saw it with Corey Trice 2 years ago. We saw it with Roman Wilson last year. You can go back to Calvin Austin. Is Will Howard potentially in a red shirt situation here, regardless of how quickly he heals, because we know how important these early days are, and that getting injured at this time of year is different than getting injured in like October or November.
It's unfortunate for Will Howard because I think he's had a good training camp. I think, he came in, he reminds me of what I thought of Mason Rudolph when he arrived in training camp. Like, hey, this guy, he's not fumbling over himself. He's making good throws. He's able to make reads in practice. He's not intimidated by defense. Like I like what I've seen out of Will Howard. Granted, what I've seen out of Will Howard does not mean that this guy was ready to be a starter right now in the NFL. He was succeeding against the third and fourth string defenses of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that deserves noted for what he's been doing. But again, like the things that I look for a 6th round pick who's in his rookie season, I look to see, hey, can you just simply get the ball, throw the ball well? Can you put it on a spot where receivers can get it, and can you look like you can run an offense in a pinch? And those things he absolutely shown. And it's disappointing because you wanted to see those things against other teams and get to show it in preseason against other teams, third team defenses, and maybe at some point second team defenses. But make no mistake, Will Howard was not in some position. I know there's a lot of Steelers fans that are like, oh man, now he'll never start this year. He never was going to start this year. The only way he would start this year is the same way he might still start this year, is if there's a complete disaster of a 2019 situation where Aaron Rodgers and Mason Rudolph go down. And because he will be back by the end of preseason, he'll be back for the start of the season, but he was never going to be the starting guy. And I think people need to get that out of their heads. Will Howard is a good backup quarterback. That's when I projected him to be. Heck, I thought the Steelers should have picked him in the 4th because that's what I thought he should be. And so I think they got a steal with him in the 6th. But I think Steelers fans need to calm down when they start getting into he's the next franchise quarterback talk. He's checking off good boxes right now for being a 6th round pick and a rookie. And that's a good thing from him. But trying to make it more than that, that's where you could end up getting a little ahead of yourself.
Steelers are 3-point underdogs for the preseason opener this weekend, according to our friends at FanDuel. Chris, what are they going to do at quarterback now with the guy that ostensibly was probably going to get a lot of reps in preseason now out? Mason Rudolph is a veteran. How much does he need the preseason to get ready? How much of Skylar Thompson are we going to see? Are they going to potentially bring in another camp arm for these next couple of weeks just to get through these preseason games so they're not overplaying, a Mason Rudolph, a Skylar Thompson, that type of thing?
They might bring in another camp arm just for that reason. But I definitely see Mason Rudolph being in there because sometimes like what you're looking at isn't just the quarterback, it's everyone else. And sometimes having a quarterback who can conduct the offense in a good way gives you that chance to look at everyone else. Like, for example, and we'll get into the receivers later, like Roman Wilson. This is a big preseason for Roman Wilson because he didn't get any chances last year to prove himself. Now he has those chances. But if you just play a fourth string Skylar Thompson the entire preseason until Aaron Rodgers gets his 1 or 2 drives, then you miss the opportunity for Roman Wilson to work with a quarterback that's of an NFL caliber. With Mason Rudolph, hey, he can start in the NFL. He can win games. He can make good throws. He can read defenses. He can do the basic things that you ask of a quarterback. And that's why they brought him back, because he does those things well. And that's what I think you want to see out of a quarterback. So I think what you're going to see right now is Mason Rudolph's probably going to start this weekend. And then you'll have Skylar Thompson fill in, maybe, for the time after that. If they get another camp arm, they'll bring them in. But this is why you get a Skylar Thompson, because you, just in case one guy goes down, you need another guy to get your offense through. And, I think it's fine where they're at right now. Skylar Thompson, for a fourth string camp arm has been fine during training camp, just like Will Howard's been fine. I think that's the plan right now. I don't think it's going to derail them too much. It's just unfortunate that Will Howard doesn't get the snaps that Skylar Thompson now will.
Chris, it's not just Will Howard, but a lot of bumps and bruises and potentially more than that at Steelers training camp so far. Isaac Seumalo's missed time. Jonnu Smith left practice early yesterday. Calvin Austin's been out for a few days. Joey Porter has been out at points. Same with Alex Highsmith. I think Dean Lowry said he has a torn ACL. Has this camp been particularly rugged to your eye, or is this just the normal wear and tear, or maybe a little bit more than that?
I feel like this is the normal wear and tear. I mean, like there's injuries every training camp. The important part of training camp is you're training your body as a player to deal with just the car crash of playing in the NFL. I mean, that's literally what it's like when you're, especially when you're playing a physical position like on the line, or a linebacker or a running back, and even wide receivers and corners, because you're getting hit and jammed and all sorts of things there. But you're training your body for that, and in doing that, you're gonna have your nicks and your bruises. And as TJ Watt will tell you, as Broderick Jones said yesterday when I interviewed him, you're never truly 100% in the NFL anymore. Like by the time you're in week 5, even everybody has something that's ailing them. And I think that's the thing that you have to remember. So for me, at least, I think that this has been a normal camp when it comes to injuries. Now, Calvin Austin, I want to see how that goes, because his rookie season, he missed an entire year, and it started off as, oh, it's not that bad, and then it was like, oh no, he's out for the season, and it was kind of rough there. So I'm not saying it's that bad, but the fact that Mike Tomlin's not saying anything, and yet he's still sitting out, and he's one of those guys that this is a big contract year for him. It's not like this is, he's a proven player, or a guy that they're highly confident, like a first or a second round pick. That does alarm me a little bit. I'll see we'll see what happens there. But as far as, other positions, like last year, Russell Wilson got hurt, pushing a sled in the conditioning drills. Roman Wilson missed all of last season. Things like this happen. It's natural. It's part of the game. Alex Highsmith has been dealing with a groin injury. So like this kind of stuff is going to happen. So it's not that big of a deal. Yet, if they lose someone for the season, then we'll start talking about that. But right now, these are the to be expected injuries of training camp.
Chris, is there any of these that concern you more than others? Is it Isaac Seumalo up front with this offensive line, struggling to a lot of people's eye early in training camp, and trying to find that chemistry, and him being a big part of that as the one true veteran guy there? Is it Jonnu Smith as a guy that they made a big splash to go out and get? Yes, Jalen Ramsey was part of that deal, but there were a lot of people who were excited about Jonnu Smith as well, trying to incorporate him into this offense. Any worry that he's missed some time, or is there another name I haven't mentioned that maybe you're worried about a little more than the average?
I haven't seen enough from enough information or things on the Jonnu Smith injury to know if that's going to be serious. Isaac Seumalo was a concern when he was on the NFI list, non-football related injury list, and when he would be back. But literally, like yesterday, they came back in pads on Tuesday, and I watched them practice, and he was back with Broderick Jones, and both of them have missed time. Like Broderick Jones missed, quite a few practices as well. But the Steelers defense was working stunts and twists, and I saw them both picking them up pretty well, communicating, looking pretty solid. Broderick Jones, a guy that, when the pads weren't on, didn't look like he was having great practices. But as I said, hey, let's let the pads get on. Let's let them get comfortable. Let's get them to get settled into this training camp. And I'd say the last 2 times I've seen Broderick Jones, he's looked better, and he's been winning more. And yesterday I thought was his best practice. He looked really composed and taking on Nick Herbig and different pass rushers. And again, like they're communicating. So I don't think that's as big of a deal. The big deal, I think, is going to be Calvin Austin, because right now he's supposed to be the team's number 2 wide receiver. And if he misses, the rest of training camp and preseason, if that's, based off of, just we don't know what his injury is, or if he misses a significant amount of time, that's going to be really annoying for them to try to get their chemistry with the guy who's supposed to be the next, pass catcher in that room after DK Metcalf. And then, maybe, and who knows, maybe Roman Wilson, this makes him step up and he becomes that guy. And that's why they drafted him in the 3rd round. But I think Calvin Austin is the one that I'm keeping my eye on the most right now.
We're going to talk receivers on the other side. Make sure you stay tuned to the North Shore Drive podcast and the Post-Gazette Sports YouTube channel. Subscribe if you haven't already, if you're joining us for the first time. And like this video if you enjoyed it. Help us out in the YouTube algorithm. And we will talk to you again real soon. It's the Wednesday North Shore Drive podcast. I'm Adam Bittner, joined by Christopher Carter, our Steelers insider at the Post-Gazette. We are talking about Steelers receivers and what we've seen from them in training camp. Got into them a little bit in the last segment, but we'll keep digging in on Roman Wilson, Scotty Miller, some of the other headlines going around the NFL. Before we do, we want to thank a sponsor. If you were diagnosed with mesothelioma or lung cancer, call your local attorneys at Goldberg, Persky, and White. For over 40 years, their firm has represented thousands of lung cancer and mesothelioma victims. Call 1-800-COMPLEX or visit gpwlaw.com for a free consultation. Chris, Ray Fittipaldo, our colleague at the Post-Gazette, wrote yesterday that Aaron Rodgers' chemistry with Roman Wilson was a highlight of the Tuesday practice through a nifty pass diving touchdown catch by Roman Wilson in the back of the end zone. We've also heard that Roman Wilson's been invisible at times when Calvin Austin has been healthy and kind of taking that number 2 receiver role. So what kind of camp do you think Roman Wilson is having overall?
I think for a while he was having a very meh camp, but the last, I'd say 3 or 4 practices, I've seen him improving. And it might not even be improving. It might just be getting more opportunities to show his improvements. Like, I think the first time I really wowed at Roman Wilson was when he went one-on-one on a deep ball against Joey Porter Jr., and Joey Porter Jr. went up, tipped the ball, but Roman Wilson still came down with it. And I was really impressed in that moment. But it was also like, okay, well, that was one big tipped ball. Let's see how he continues to do. But after that, he caught more passes from Aaron Rodgers. I think the big thing that Roman Wilson needed to do is he needed to be able to understand how to run his routes the way that Aaron Rodgers wants him to, because there were times where he would run a route and he'd run the right route, but then he'd run it just a little too flat or a little too deep or a little too here or there. And Aaron Rodgers is a stickler for those things. There were sometimes you could see him just stare down Roman Wilson like, come on, man. And I think it's taking time for Roman Wilson to get to that level. And what I also appreciate about Roman Wilson, he's very down to earth. When I talk to him, I asked him about what he's being challenged to improve upon right now and how he feels about his progress. And he was straight up. He was like, hey man, my feet are getting too out in front of me. And, my feet are out too wide. And he's talking about the things that Zach Azzani is telling him, I have to improve in these areas. And, I think that's really cool when you hear a guy go over technique like that and saying like, and he knows itemized, like I have to knock out these things before I can say that I'm taking the steps that I need to take. And that shows that shows focus, right? Like you want a guy who knows what he's talking about, who's not just saying, oh yeah, I just have to be better, because that could mean anything. And sometimes players just say that because they don't want you to know what they want to work on, because they don't want other people to know what they're working on, because then, say a defender hears that and they're like, oh, well, I know that's his weakness. That sometimes it's just the defensive nature there. But Roman Wilson's just like, no, I don't care. I'm gonna just get better on my own time. And I think that's a really cool upfront thing that he has for him. So I think he's done a solid job. The big thing will be to determine this will be how does he stack the rest of his days in training camp. There's only a few more practices left that they have at Saint Vincent College, but then how does he show up in the preseason game? Because we still haven't seen Roman Wilson in a game. I mean, since last year. So if he catches, I think what you're going to see Roman Wilson do is a lot of crossing patterns, a lot of shallow crosses, a lot of slants, a lot of post patterns, things that cross the middle part of the field that allowed him to use his acceleration and speed to get away from defenders in a horizontal way across the field. Because then what's going to happen is if that's in man coverage, if the defender loses that inside leverage for just a second, Roman Wilson does have 4.4 speed. Like, he is really, really fast. If he gets out in front of a guy, those are the things that Aaron Rodgers can then say, okay, I just have to lead him a little bit. And now that we have our chemistry, that's going to turn it could be a 6-yard pass into a 20-yard gain if Roman Wilson beats his man. So I think he's doing pretty well right now, all things considered. But I need to see how he continues to stack days at camp and how he performs in the preseason.
Chris, Scotty Miller is a name that I think a lot of Steelers fans have moved on from, forgotten, but he's still on this roster, and I know he's caught the eye of several beat writers. There's been some talk about him, particularly from this weekend. Where does Scotty Miller stand in terms of making this team in your mind? Is he still on the outside looking in, having to impress some people maybe in some of these games, or is his veteran savvy enough that he's legitimately in the conversation here?
I think he's kind of made himself like the veteran version of, if Roman Wilson doesn't improve, that's what he'll be. And so by saying that, I'm saying that he can do a lot of the things that he's quick, he's fast, he can get out on people, and but he has more of the details in his game. He's just not a guy that you're going to make a highlight of your offense, but he's a solid depth player, and I think they're going to keep him. I wasn't so sure at the start of camp, but right now I think he could be the 4th or 5th guy at wide receiver, because I do think the Steelers, they like having their small, quick, fast guys on this offense, because those are things that Aaron Rodgers can use. Those are players that Aaron Rodgers can use strategically to take apart different types of defenses. And I think that's where he'll fit in. But again, I think it's cool because where Roman Wilson's learning the details, Scotty Miller quickly adjusts to them. He's talked to us about, he learned how to do that when he was with Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. Tom Brady was like, hey, if you ran your route a little bit wrong, Tom was going to let you know. And Aaron's the same way. But for Roman, he's adjusting to that. This is his first time dealing with a quarterback like that. But for Scotty, he's like, I've been in the NFL X amount of years. This is what it's all about. So I wouldn't be shocked if Scotty Miller made the team right now. I think he's done pretty well there. As far as, speed and hands and what he's been doing, he gets the basics done, and that's what you do need in the receiver room sometimes.
I'm curious your thoughts on, who those 4th and 5th guys are, if there's going to be a 6th guy, if they're going to keep 6 receivers. Ray, in his first roster projection of the summer, had 5 receivers. He had Robert Woods as the number 4, Ben Skowronek as the number 5, Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin, and DK Metcalf as the 3 locks. How are you seeing that conversation play out? I guess I'm particularly interested in your thoughts on Robert Woods, because we have not heard a ton about him so far during training camp.
Robert Woods has made some plays. I mean, I think the thing is he's the Allen Robinson and the Van Jefferson of this receiver room. He's the guy who has had a good career in the NFL, but is definitely on the tail end of his career, but has experience and can bring things to your locker room. The thing, though, is that I don't know that they need that guy right now, because the reason they brought Allen Robinson and Van Jefferson is because their top receivers were George Pickens and Deontay Johnson, 2 young guys that were just weren't the best locker room guys, and that's why they're no longer here. But now you have DK Metcalf, who is a good locker room guy and is your best player in the receiver room. So the question is, do you need Robert Woods to be that kind of steadying presence, or should you just go for the guy that best fits what you're trying to do? Now, Robert Woods, I think, is doing a fine job, and I think ultimately it's going to come down to between Scotty Miller and Robert Woods for that final receiver spot. Because like Ray said, and like you said, the locks are definitely DK Metcalf, Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson. Unless someone gets hurt, those are the top 3 wide receivers. You can book that now. Now, I also wouldn't put it past the Steelers to sign someone at some point. I think what they're doing right now is they're gauging what's the biggest need that they want to go after in free agency. They've already signed an extra safety in Chuck Clark. He's doing pretty solid next to Juan Thornhill. But do they need to go out and get an extra offensive lineman? Do they need another receiver? I think those are the things that they're weighing right now. Because after Austin and Wilson, it is tough picking. Now Ben Skowronek is on a deal that kind of ties him with the Steelers for a little bit. So I wouldn't be shocked to see him stick around. He's also really good in special teams. He does a lot of the versatile things that Arthur Smith loves about people in his offense. If you're big and you're strong and you can also run and catch, he wants you in his offense. So he's going to be a guy, even if he's the fifth string guy, technically he's kind of more of a lock for this roster than I think Woods or Miller is. But I'm intrigued to see how Woods and Miller get measured out, and I think it might be a thing that let's see how they do in these preseason games, because they're going to get a lot of reps there. But Woods, I think, is the more experienced guy who's been with bigger offenses, who might be a slightly better route runner than Scotty Miller. But Scotty Miller's is the faster guy between them. And so I think that's where it's going to depend who wins out and what they're able to bring to the offense, because they already have two fast guys in Austin and Wilson. But do they want a third one who could kind of replace one of those guys in Scotty Miller? Or do they want a more traditional route runner who can just kind of also do the basics as well, just maybe just losing some of that speed and being sharper in some of his techniques?
Chris, you mentioned free agency. Keenan Allen is going back to the Chargers. Still names out there. I think Amari Cooper is still unsigned. Alan Lazard is a name that keeps coming up because of his connection to Aaron Rodgers. Are they still swimming in that end of the pool potentially in your mind with those big names that people know from fantasy football or just watching the NFL? Or is it going to be more of the Scotty Miller, Robert Woods types if they add to this receivers room?
I think they're swimming in it. I think that they've shown that they're willing to make moves. They have the cap space. I think they have $17 million in cap space or something like that. If they have that, then they normally like to take $8 to $10 million with them into the season so that they can have emergency funds to address anything. And Keenan Allen himself just signed an $8-ish million contract. That's perfect for where they're at right now. So Keenan Allen had kind of said he didn't want to play with the Steelers with their current setup, but I'd be looking at Amari Cooper, and Amari Cooper could come in and be your number 2 wide receiver right next to DK Metcalf. And then that would give you time. If Calvin Austin has to miss time in preseason, if you need more time for Owen Wilson to develop, those are things that can happen now with Amari Cooper as your number 2. Then those guys can be your 3 and 4. But I think the other thing to consider here, Adam, is the Steelers have been so tight end heavy in training camp with Pat Fryer, with Jonnu Smith, Darnell Washington, even Connor Hayward getting targets in this offense. How much are they going to have a third receiver? How many times are they going to have a third receiver on the field versus like a second tight end? That's a tough question to answer right now, because Arthur Smith is loving these tight ends. And that's the reason they went and got Jonnu Smith, so he could effectively be that third receiver at times, right? So I don't, if they go and get Amari Cooper, it might relegate Austin or Wilson to not be that much of a part of this offense this year. And so that's the only thing that I'm holding up on. I think it would behoove them to get Amari Cooper because I think he's better than these guys, and he's a veteran. He could pair well with DK Metcalf. He quickly, I think, work up a relationship with Aaron Rodgers, and that can be an asset that you use. But at the same time, if you're looking forward for the development of these guys and you think Calvin Austin and or Roman Wilson can be a dude this year, then you might want to see how those play out. And if you get Amari Cooper, it's going to be harder to see that happen unless injuries occur, because I do think this team is going to use a lot of double and even sometimes triple tight end sets.
It'll be interesting to see how that plays out, especially in this preseason game coming up on Saturday. Chris, we're going to leave it here. We're going to hear more from you and the guys out in Latrobe. Plenty of player interviews coming your way. Plenty of stand-ups, we call them, practice reports. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like this video if you enjoyed it. Help us out in the YouTube algorithm. We always appreciate that. And we will talk to you again real soon.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.